You know your family's messed up when you show up to your own vacation house and your key fob doesn't work. Turns out, my sister thought a ring on her finger gave her rights to my half of a $3 million lakefront estate. I read the HOA bylaws. Let's just say karma charged her rent. Which city are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, and if you've ever had family drama over property, buckle in. This vacation story was anything but relaxing. Let's jump into the story. The July heat was already climbing past 90 when I pulled my Tesla into the gated community at Lake Tahoe. Remy, my 12-year-old rescue cat, meowed from his carrier in the passenger seat. He always knew when we were close to the vacation house. After 14 hours of driving from San Francisco, broken up by charging stops and his anxiety medication, we both needed this weekend desperately. My divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. 6 months of hell, of dividing assets, of my ex-husband trying to claim rights to properties he'd never paid a cent toward. But this house? This was mine and Claire's. We'd bought it together 5 years ago. Back when we were actually sisters who loved each other, not whatever we'd become now. I pressed the key fob at the community gate. Nothing. Pressed again. The little red light blinked, but the gate stayed firmly closed. That's weird, I muttered, reaching for my phone to call security. Maybe the battery was dead. 20 minutes later, after security verified my identity and manually opened the gate with profuse apologies about system updates, I finally pulled into the driveway of our house. God, it was gorgeous. 3 stories of glass and steel nestled into the hillside, with a view of the lake that made your chest tight with how beautiful it was. I grabbed Remy's carrier and my weekend bag, walking up to the smart lock on the front door. Pressed my code. Access denied. My stomach dropped. I tried again, slower this time. Access denied. That's when I noticed Claire's new Range Rover in the garage through the window, and Derek's ridiculous yellow Lamborghini beside it. My sister had married Derek 8 months ago, right in the middle of my divorce proceedings. Great timing, really. While I was losing half my life, she was gaining a husband who thought his trust fund made him God's gift to real estate. I knocked. Hard. It took them 10 minutes to answer, and when Claire finally opened the door, she was wearing a silk robe and an expression of fake surprise that would have won her a Razzie. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" I stared at her. "It's my week, Claire. We've had the same alternating schedule for 5 years. Friday to Friday, remember?" She tucked a strand of her perfectly blown-out blonde hair behind her ear. "Oh well. Derek and I assumed you weren't coming anymore. You know, with everything that happened with Marcus, my divorce has nothing to do with our property agreement." Derek appeared behind her, shirtless and smirking. "Babe, who is it?" He saw me and his smirk widened. "Oh, hey Becca. It's Rebecca. And I need you both to move. It's my week." Claire shifted, blocking the doorway more. "Actually, we've been talking to the HOA about updating the usage agreement. Since you're single now and we're a family, it makes more sense for us to have primary access." My hands tightened on Remy's carrier. He meowed, sensing my tension. "You changed the locks. Updated the security system," Derek corrected, like that made it better. "For everyone's safety." I could feel my lawyer instincts kicking in, the ones that had made me senior partner at 35. "Stay calm. Document everything." "I see. And the HOA approved this?" Claire's smile faltered slightly. "Well, we're in discussions." "Great. Then you won't mind if I contact them directly." I turned and walked back to my car, my hands shaking with rage. Behind me, I heard Derek laugh. "Told you she'd give up easy. City lawyers are all talk." That's when I realized why they really locked me out. I sat in my Tesla in the driveway, air conditioning blasting, Remy curled in my lap purring anxiously. My phone was already out, scrolling through my emails for the HOA contact information. Lake Tahoe Luxury Estates HOA. Run by Margaret Chen, a 70-year-old former judge who took her role as seriously as she'd taken her bench. I'd met her once at a community wine tasting. She'd mentioned she admired women who knew their rights. Time to test that admiration. My email was precise, professional, and included 12 attachments: the original deed showing 50/50 ownership, 5 years of alternating week schedules, bank statements showing my half of all property taxes and HOA fees, and screenshots of Claire's text from last month confirming my July dates. I CC'd my assistant at the firm with instructions to prepare a formal cease and desist if needed. Within an hour, my phone rang. Margaret Chen herself. Miss Reynolds, I've reviewed your documentation. This is concerning. The Fairweather Pierce household submitted a request to modify access privileges, but they indicated you'd agreed to the changes. I absolutely did not agree, Margaret. I arrived for my scheduled week to find myself locked out of my own property. There was a pause. Are you sitting in your vehicle right now? With my cat? Yes. In 95-degree heat. Unacceptable. Give me 30 minutes. 28 minutes later, 3 cars pulled up, Margaret in her pristine white Mercedes, a uniformed security officer, and a van from TechSecure, our community's smart home company. Margaret stepped out wearing a power suit despite the heat, her silver hair pulled back in a bun that meant business. She took one look at me holding Remy and her expression hardened. Officer Martinez will ensure you have immediate access. TechSecure will restore your codes within the hour. She looked toward the house where Claire and Derek were now watching from the window. I'll handle the other matter personally. As the tech worked on the door, Margaret pulled out a leather-bound folder. Miss Reynolds, are you familiar with Section 15.3 of our HOA bylaws? I wasn't, but I was about to be. Unauthorized restriction of co-owner access is a Level 4 violation. It carries a fine of $500 per day, per person restricted. She made a note. You've been locked out for how long? I thought back. My code stopped working 2 weeks ago. I thought it was a glitch. 14 days, $7,000 in fines, plus emergency service fees for today's call-out. She snapped the folder shut. They'll receive the notice within the hour. The front door clicked open. My codes worked again, but Claire was already storming out, Derek trailing behind her. Margaret, this is ridiculous. We live here full-time now. No, Margaret said coolly, you live here according to your scheduled weeks, as per your ownership agreement. Any deviation requires written consent from all parties. She abandoned the property. Derek's face was getting red. She hasn't been here in months. I was here in May, I said quietly. You left wine stains on my Turkish rug and threw a party that got 3 noise complaints. Margaret's eyebrow rose. 3 complaints? That's another fine. At this point, I wasn't just fighting for my weekends. I was fighting for my sanity. That night, I finally settled into my bedroom, Remy purring on the Egyptian cotton sheets beside me. The house felt different, like it was holding its breath. Claire and Derek had left in a fury of slamming doors and squealing tires, but not before Derek muttered something about this isn't over. I'd won this round, but something felt off. Claire had never been this aggressive before. Desperate, maybe? I poured myself a glass of the good Cabernet and sat on the deck, watching the sun paint the lake gold and crimson. That's when I noticed it, a folder Claire had left on the outdoor table, probably in her hurry to leave. I shouldn't have looked. But I'm a lawyer. Documents called to me. Inside were real estate listings. Not just any listings, but our house. Photos, market analysis, a drafted sales agreement. Listed for $3.8 million. My hands trembled. She was trying to sell our house. My house. But that wasn't the worst part. Paper clipped to the back was a medical bill. Derek's medical bill. $487,000 for experimental cancer treatment not covered by insurance. Dated 3 months ago. I sat back, wine forgotten. Derek had cancer, and they needed money. Fast. Comment below if you've ever had a power struggle with family over money or space. Who was in the right? Because suddenly this wasn't feeling so black and white anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. You happy now? He could die because you're petty. I stared at the message, then at Remy, who'd padded out to join me. The old me, the pre-divorce me, would have caved immediately. Would have offered to sell, to help, to sacrifice my sanctuary for family. But the new me? The one who'd watched family take until I had nothing left? I typed back, then maybe you should have asked instead of attempting theft. Her response was immediate. It's not theft if it's family. I almost threw my phone into the lake. Instead I called Margaret Chen. Sorry to bother you this evening, but I found something concerning. Evidence that they may be attempting to force a sale without my consent. Margaret's voice was sharp. Bring everything to the HOA office tomorrow. This escalates things significantly. That night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I heard something outside. Footsteps on the deck. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when I saw him. Derek swaying slightly, clearly drunk. He was standing at the railing, staring at the lake. In the moonlight, I could see what I'd missed before. How thin he'd gotten. How his designer clothes hung loose. I could have called security. Instead, I grabbed a blanket and a water bottle and quietly stepped outside. He jerked when he saw me. Come to gloat, come to make sure you don't fall in the lake and create more paperwork for me. That got a bitter laugh. Claire said you'd become cold. Guess the divorce did that. I handed him the water. The divorce taught me the difference between being kind and being a doormat. We stood in silence for a while. Finally he spoke. Stage 3. Started treatment in April. Insurance called it experimental and dropped us. My trust fund's gone. Claire's savings are gone. This house is all we have left. So you tried to steal my half. We tried to survive. He looked at me. What would you do? If it was your husband, my ex-husband, I'd let him rot. The words came out harder than I intended. But if he'd been honest with me, asked for help, we could have worked something out. A loan against the property. A temporary buyout with right of first refusal. There were options, Derek. Legal ones. Claire was too proud to ask you for help. Said you'd lord it over her forever. And theft was better. He didn't answer. What happened next? No one walks away from that without scars. The next morning brought a storm. Not the weather kind, though clouds were gathering over the lake. The human kind in the form of Claire pounding on my door at 7 a.m. We need to talk. Now. I was still in my silk pajamas. Remy weaving between my legs. It's my week, Claire. You can't be here. Screw the week schedule. Her mascara was smudged. She'd been crying. Derek told me you two talked. I know you know. I let her in. Not out of kindness, but because Mrs. Patterson next door was already peering through her curtains, and I didn't need the drama. Claire collapsed on my couch, the same spot where we used to binge Netflix and drink cheap wine in better days. I didn't want it to go this way. Then why did it? Because you have everything. The words exploded out of her. You got the career, the money, the respect. Even your divorce came with a massive settlement. And I got, what? A sick husband and bills I can't pay? I poured coffee, taking my time to respond. I got those things because I worked 100-hour weeks for 15 years. Because I sacrificed my marriage to my career. Because I earned them. Must be nice to earn your way to wealth instead of watching your husband die. Low blow. But I'd learned from the best. You're right. It is nice. Know what else is nice? Not committing fraud. She flinched. I wasn't going to actually sell without your signature. The forged documents suggest otherwise. Her head snapped up. What forged documents? I pulled out my phone, showing her photos I'd taken of the sales agreement. There on the seller's line was a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. Close enough to fool a casual glance, but I knew my own handwriting. This is a felony, Claire. All the color drained from her face. I didn't. Derek said he was just preparing paperwork in case you agreed. Derek's dying, not stupid, he knows forging signatures is illegal. She burst into tears. Real ones this time. I can't lose him, Becca. I can't. He's all I have. You have a sister. Or you did before you tried to rob her. My phone rang. Margaret Chen. Miss Reynolds, I need you and the other parties at the HOA office immediately. We have a situation. We drove separately, Claire in her Range Rover, me in my Tesla with Remy, who developed separation anxiety since the divorce and went everywhere with me now. The HOA office was in a restored Victorian at the community's entrance, all gingerbread trim and old money authority. Margaret was waiting in the conference room with 2 other board members and a woman I didn't recognize. Sit, Margaret commanded. We sat. This is Dr. Patricia Kwan, our community mediator. Given the complexity of this situation, the board feels mediation is required before any legal action proceeds. Derek arrived 15 minutes late, looking worse in daylight. The designer clothes couldn't hide the hollows under his eyes. Dr. Kwan smiled warmly. I understand there's a dispute over property access and potential sales. There's a dispute over attempted fraud. I corrected. Let's start with feelings, not accusations, Dr. Kwan said. Claire, how do you feel about the current situation? For the next 2 hours we went in circles. Claire cried about Derek's cancer. Derek ranted about unfair insurance practices. I kept bringing us back to the forged documents. Dr. Kwan kept redirecting to emotional truths. Then she said something that changed everything. Rebecca, don't you think family should come before property? I stood up. Are you seriously suggesting I should accept theft because we share DNA? I'm suggesting compassion might serve everyone better than litigation. Compassion? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Where was compassion when they changed the locks? When they forged my signature? When they tried to steal my safe space after the worst year of my life? Margaret intervened. Perhaps we should focus on solutions, not philosophy. But Dr. Kwan wasn't done. Rebecca, your sister is facing the potential loss of her husband. Surely you can relate after your own loss. The room went silent. Even Claire looked shocked. My loss? My voice was deadly quiet. My ex-husband cheated for 3 years, hid assets in offshore accounts, and tried to claim my premarital properties in the divorce. The only thing I lost was 200 pounds of dead weight. Don't you dare compare that to actual cancer. But the emotional journey, Dr. Kwan started. The emotional journey of being robbed by family? Yes, let's discuss that. That's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't mediation. This was an ambush designed to guilt me into compliance. You won't believe what the mediator uncovered over wine. The mediation broke for lunch, and I escaped to my car where Remy was waiting in his climate-controlled carrier. My hands were shaking as I gave him his anxiety medication. Maybe I needed some too. My phone buzzed. A text from my assistant at the firm. Boss, I did some digging on that mediator. You need to see this. I called her immediately. What did you find, Joyce? Dr. Patricia Kwan isn't just any mediator. She's Derek's cousin, and she's not certified by the state mediation board anymore. Lost her license 2 years ago for ethical violations. The pieces clicked. This whole thing was a setup. Send me everything and get Richard on the line. Richard was our firm's senior litigation partner and my mentor. If anyone could navigate this mess, it was him. 20 minutes later, armed with information and a strategy, I walked back into the Victorian. But instead of heading to the conference room, I followed the sound of voices to the break room. There they were, Dr. Kwan, Claire and Derek, sharing a bottle of wine, celebrating by the looks of it. The guilt angle is working, Dr. Kwan was saying. Give me another hour and she'll cave. She always was the soft one in the family.
You sure?
Derek asked. She seems different now. Harder. Claire laughed bitterly. The divorce broke something in her. But Patty's right. Deep down she's still the girl who gave me her kidney when we were 25. I froze. She'd played that card. The kidney donation. My ultimate sacrifice for family, thrown around like casual ammunition. Just keep pushing the family angle, Dr. Kwan continued. I'll suggest a 70-30 split in your favor. Frame it as charitable rather than theft. And if she doesn't agree, Derek asked, then we go with Plan B, the competency evaluation. A woman traveling with a cat, talking to it like it's human, clear signs of mental distress post-divorce. I'd heard enough. I hit record on my phone and stepped into view. Fascinating strategy session. Please don't let me interrupt. The wine glass slipped from Claire's hand, shattering on the floor. Red wine spreading like blood across white tile. Becca, we were just conspiring, committing fraud, planning defamation. I kept my phone visible, still recording. By all means tell me more about my mental competency. Remy would love to hear it too. Dr. Kwan stood, trying to project authority. Recording without consent is illegal. Not in California when you're documenting a crime in progress. You should know that, but then again you lost your license for a reason, didn't you, Patricia? Derek's face went gray.
You looked her up.
Due diligence. Something you might have tried before attempted fraud. I turned to Claire. And you, using my kidney donation as a manipulation tactic. That's a new low, even for you. Margaret Chen appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. Is there a problem here? Several, I said, forwarding her the recording. Starting with your mediator being Derek's cousin and unlicensed. The next hour was chaos. Margaret called an emergency board meeting. Dr. Kwan was escorted out. Legal counsel was summoned. Through it all, Claire sat in shock while Derek tried damage control. Finally, Margaret returned with the full board. The attempted mediation is null and void. Dr. Kwan will be prosecuted for practicing without a license. As for the property dispute, she pulled out a thick document. Miss Reynolds, you have two options. Press criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy, or accept the following terms. The Fairweather Pierce party will pay all fines, totaling $47,000 with today's violations. They will sign a binding agreement, acknowledging your 50% ownership and alternating week schedule. Any future violations result in forced sale with 80% of proceeds going to the wronged party. And Derek's medical bills, Claire whispered. Margaret's expression softened slightly. There are legal ways to leverage property for medical expenses. With both parties' consent, this board can recommend financial advisors who specialize in medical hardship equity solutions. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Beneath the designer clothes and perfect makeup, she looked exhausted, scared, desperate. There's a third option, I heard myself say. Claire and Derek can rent my weeks at market rate when I'm not using them. The income goes directly to a medical expense account. But, I met Claire's eyes. This requires total honesty going forward. One lie, one scheme, and we go straight to criminal prosecution. Claire's tears were real this time. You'd do that, after everything? I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the girl who needed a kidney 20 years ago. But that girl better show up going forward, not this stranger you've become. Would you have done what I did, or gone nuclear? I really want to hear your take in the comments. The paperwork took 3 weeks to finalize. 3 weeks of lawyers, contracts, and awkward encounters at the community mailbox. But finally everything was signed, notarized, and legally binding. The rental agreement was simple. Claire and Derek could rent my unused weeks at $3,000 per week, with the money going directly to an escrow account for medical expenses. I'd still get my scheduled weeks, and they'd get income without losing the property. The first test came on a Friday in August. My week was starting, and I pulled up to find the house immaculate. No wine stains, no party debris, just a note on the counter. Fridge is stocked. Your favorite wine is chilling. See. Remy immediately claimed his spot on the master bed while I unpacked. For the first time in months, the house felt like home again. That evening, I was reading on the deck when Claire appeared on the path from their rental cabin. She hesitated at the gate. I'm making seafood paella. Derek's having a good day and specifically requested it. There's enough for 4, and I know how much you used to love my paella. Used to. Past tense. Because we were past tense now, weren't we? I have plans. I lied. No you don't. She smiled sadly. You're going to sit out here with your wine and that legal thriller you've been reading for 6 months, and Remy's going to judge you for having takeout again. She knew me too well, or at least she knew who I used to be. One dinner. But we're not playing happy family. Just family. However that looks now. The paella was perfect. Derek looked better, though still thin. We talked about safe things. The weather. The new restaurant in town. How Remy had developed a fascination with the dock's resident duck family. It almost felt normal until Derek raised his glass. To Rebecca. For not letting us become complete monsters. You already were monsters, I said. This is rehabilitation. But I clinked glasses anyway. After dinner, Claire walked me back to the main house. I know sorry isn't enough, but I am. Sorry I mean. For all of it. I know. That's it? You know? I turned to face her. What do you want, Claire? Forgiveness? That's not how trust works. You broke it. Deliberately. Systematically. Sorry doesn't fix that. Then what does? Time. Consistency. Honoring the agreements. Maybe in a year, we can have a conversation about rebuilding. Maybe not. She nodded, tears threatening. I really did think I was going to lose him. It made me crazy. It made you cruel. There's a difference. I left her standing there and went inside. Remy was waiting by the door, judging the human drama with feline superiority. I scooped him up, breathing in his familiar scent. The weeks turned into months. The rental income helped with Derek's treatment. His cancer went into remission by October. The first snow started falling in November, transforming the lake into a winter wonderland. I was there for Thanksgiving week, my first holiday alone since the divorce. I'd planned to spend it working, but Claire knocked on the door Wednesday night. Don't say no yet, she started. But Mom's here. She drove up from Sacramento. She wants to see you. Our mother, who'd taken Claire's side in every childhood argument. who'd called me selfish for pursuing my career instead of babies, who'd somehow missed my entire divorce because she was on a cruise with her book club. Absolutely not. She's different, Becca. Dad's death changed her. Dad died 3 years ago, and she's been in therapy since. Real therapy, not the crystal healing stuff. She wants to apologize. I laughed. The Reynolds women don't do apologies. You proved that. Maybe it's time we learned. She left without pushing. But an hour later, I heard a soft knock. I opened the door to find my mother, looking older and somehow smaller than I remembered. Hello, Rebecca. Mother. She took in my appearance, Remy in my arms, the wine glass in my hand. May I come in? Just for a moment, against my better judgment. I let her in. She sat carefully on the couch, clutching her purse like armor. I heard about everything. The house, the forgery, the mediation disaster. She paused. I'm ashamed of how Claire behaved. How I taught her to behave. Prioritizing marriage and dependency over integrity. I said nothing. Remy settled between us, a furry buffer. I failed you both differently, she continued. Claire, by making her think she needed a man to be complete. You by punishing your independence instead of celebrating it. I'm sorry, Rebecca, deeply sorry. Why now? Because I'm 73, and I've lost a husband and almost lost a daughter to my own stupidity. Because my therapist says I need to own my failures. Because, her voice cracked, because I miss my brilliant, brave daughter, who gave her sister a kidney and never asked for anything in return. We talked until midnight. Not healing, exactly, but starting. She pet Remy, who graciously allowed it. She told me about therapy, about recognizing her own mother's patterns she'd repeated, about wanting to break the cycle before it was too late. When she left, I felt lighter somehow. Not fixed, but less broken. Trust me when I say, sometimes the quietest winds echo the loudest. I'm writing this from the deck of the lake house, watching the sunset paint the water gold. Remy's chasing a butterfly, looking younger than his 13 years. The dock has a new addition, a small sailboat I bought myself for my 40th birthday. Claire and Derek are down at their cabin. We have dinner together once a month now. Not as the family we were, but as the family we're becoming. Careful, boundaried, but real. The rental agreement has evolved. They've paid off Derek's medical debt and started saving for their own place. Next year, they'll buy me out at market value, and I'll use the money to purchase a different vacation home. Somewhere without memories, where Remy and I can truly start fresh. Margaret Chen retired from the HOA, but not before implementing new policies about mediator verification and family property disputes. She sends me wine every Christmas with a note. To the woman who taught an old judge new tricks. My mother visits monthly. We're learning each other again. Two women who've survived our own wars. She's teaching me to garden. I'm teaching her boundaries. It's a work in progress. The forgery charges were dropped in exchange for Derek completing 200 hours of community service at the local legal aid clinic. He tells me it's the most meaningful work he's ever done. Maybe almost dying changes people. Maybe it just reveals who they always were underneath. And me? I made senior managing partner last month. I'm dating a marine biologist who thinks my cat obsession is endearing. I sleep through the night without anxiety medication. I've learned the difference between forgiveness and self-preservation. The lake house drama taught me something valuable. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about respect, boundaries, and choosing to show up honestly, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. My weekends are peaceful now, not because I won some war, but because I refused to fight it on their terms. I used the system, held my boundaries, and chose grace when I could have chosen vengeance. Was it satisfying? Absolutely. Was it easy? Never. Was it worth it? Every single legal filing. Remy just brought me a leaf. His new favorite game. The sun's almost down, and somewhere in the distance, I can hear Claire laughing at something Derek said. Not the fake society laugh she used to do, but her real one. The one I remember from when we were kids, before money and men and cancer complicated everything. Tomorrow I drive back to the city, back to my real life. But tonight, I'm exactly where I belong. In my space, on my terms, with my cat and my wine and my hard-won peace. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so good that their actions become irrelevant footnotes in your story. And that's the most expensive kind of victory there is. What boundaries have you had to set with family? Drop a comment below and let me know your story. And if you made it this far, you're my kind of person. Here's to choosing ourselves, even when it costs everything.